Hello Pokemon trainers, welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet video here on iStarly TV. Today we're going to talk about the new rule set for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet ranked battles, which was announced yesterday, I believe. This is for the upcoming season of Scarlet and Violet ranked in Battle Stadium. So right now, Season 2 basically just started at the beginning of this month, actually just a couple of days ago. And it's the same exact rule set as Season 1, which is, basically all the Paldea Pokemon except for the Legendary Pokemon and the Paradox Pokemon. However, for Season 2, which will begin in February, so in a month, they are adding Paradox Pokemon to the list of Pokemon that are legal. So basically you can use any Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet except for Legendary Pokemon. And also Quagsire and Cinderace and Charizard are still not going to be available either, but all of the Paradox Pokemon will be legal for Series 2. I guess that's technically Season 3, because each month is a season, I believe, but the series is the rule set. So Series 1, all Pokemon except Paradox and Legends. Series 2 is all Pokemon except Legends, so that includes the Paradox Pokemon. We can use those. I hope that's clear. I know I kind of just over-explained it, but anyways, this is really, really exciting. If you've been watching my channel, I've been doing a lot of Battle Stadium singles gameplay, and I really just want to focus on singles for this video, just talking about some of the Paradox Pokemon that I think will make a big impact once this season begins, which again will be in February. So we have about a month to kind of prepare, test things out, take a look at everything, and try to plan things out. Of course, for doubles, it's going to be different. So if you're interested in doubles, you can check out a lot of other resources for that. I know that before the first official rule set came out, like when Scarlet and Violet were pretty new, people were trying the Paradox Pokemon in doubles, and there were a lot of good ones. I mean, Flutter Mane was a big one, but for singles, I don't think that's been quite as explored. So let's take a look at a few of them. I have about 5 of them that I want to talk about. There are 14 total Paradox Pokemon that are going to be added in Series 2, and again, these Pokemon are almost like legendaries. Like their stats are on par with legendary Pokemon. They all have massive stats, and their stat distributions are really weird. Like in some ways, they remind me a little bit of Beast Pokemon, or not Beast Pokemon, Ultra Beasts from Sun and Moon, where those Pokemon had like really, really good stats in some of their stats, and then some of their other stats were actually kind of bad. And so that's kind of the case here as well. And so the 5 Paradox Pokemon that I think will have the biggest impact in Battle Stadium singles, in no particular order, are as follows. First, we have Flutter Mane, which is one of the most powerful Paradox Pokemon for a few reasons. First of all, Flutter Mane's stats are really interesting, where its HP, attack, and defense are all base 55, which is kind of low. But then its special attack, special defense, and speed are all 135. So this is a truly offensive monster from the special attacking side. It's extremely fast. It's faster than most things in the meta. It's a ghost and fairy type, which is excellent coverage. Those are I would argue, two of the best types in the meta. And it has a massive 135 base special attack stat. So this thing, I think, has potential to kind of just dominate the meta game in some ways, because it's just faster than almost everything. It hits harder than almost everything. Very few things are going to be able to take hits from it. If you look at some of the more common walls in the meta, I think Dundazo comes to mind, Skeledirge comes to mind. Those are 2 Pokemon that are more bulky on the physical side, so they're not going to enjoy taking too many strong hits from Flutter Mane. And I kind of wonder if it ends up being the case that Flutter Mane comes into the metagame and starts becoming like a dominant force in the metagame, like you see it on almost every team. Kind of wonder if Pokemon like, for example, even Scizor might rise up in usability because of that stab super effective bullet punch. Like, I haven't run the calc on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Flutter Mane is one hit KO'd by a bullet punch from Scizor. So, you know, if it gets to a point where Flutter Mane kind of, again, becomes super prevalent on almost every team, maybe Scizor rises up. Also, Mimikyu is a Pokemon that's not seeing quite as much play in this generation as it did in previous generations, but Mimikyu would be an excellent check to Flutter Mane as well. I guess that's a funny thing, Ghost and Fairy, Mimikyu, what the heck? Mimikyu is a Ghost and Fairy type just like Flutter Mane, and Flutter Mane therefore takes super effective damage from the Shadow Sneaks of Mimikyu, so I think that could be another good Pokemon to kind of check it. So I think that's interesting here. Flutter Mane looks like an absolute terror, but it looks like it also has a couple of Pokemon that can keep it in check. So let's hope that ends up happening. As far as coverage, I mean, Ghost and Fairy are already fantastic coverage by themselves, and Flutter Mane also has access to Mystical Fire, which is a decent fire type move that also rounds out that coverage pretty well. So steel type Pokemon can't just switch in and kind of wall it indefinitely. It has moves that can hit those as well. And of course, there's always Terastallizing, which will absolutely help you change to any type and give you more offensive pressure. Something I forgot to mention as well is that all of these Paradox Pokemon have the ability, well, all of the Scarlet exclusive Paradox Pokemon have Photosynthesis, which increases the user's their highest stat by 30%, or by 50% if it's their speed stat, when they are in sunlight. So when Sunny Day is active, and then this same ability triggers if they have the Booster Energy item. And then all of the Violet exclusive Paradox Pokemon, the Iron Pokemon basically, they all have basically the same ability, but instead of when Sun is active, it is when Electric Terrain is active. So that's kind of interesting too. I don't think, because there's not that many Pokemon that are useful in singles that summon either Sunlight or Electric Terrain. So I kind of feel like you're going to kind of ignore that part of the ability. And if you want to take advantage of these abilities, maybe you're going to run the Booster Energy item, because then it gives you kind of like a free Life Orb boost without the recoil. Or if your highest stat is speed, it basically gives you like a free Choice Scarf without the drawback of being locked into a move. However, the big downside is that this only triggers once when you enter the battlefield. So if you have to switch out, when you switch back in, you do not get the Booster Energy boost again. So that's something to keep in mind, but I think that this has a lot of potential to help these Pokemon as well. The next Pokemon in this list that I want to talk about is Roaring Moon, which is a really strong physical attacker, whereas Flutter Mane is a special attacker. Roaring Moon is a very strong physical attacker. It's got 139 base attack, which is pretty massive, alongside a base 119 speed stat, as well as really high HP in base 105, good special defense base 101, and then its defense is a little bit lacking at base 71, which is kind of interesting. So I guess that means you're not going to want to take hits from fighting type Pokemon, or of course, fairy type Pokemon, or dragon type Pokemon for that matter. So you're going to want to keep that in mind when you're using Roaring Moon. But I mean, this Pokemon's just really strong. I think with like a Booster Energy and a base speed stat that's really high, you might be able to, get that speed boost and just try to sweep the opponent's team. It also has the coverage you'd expect. It has Outrage, it has Dragon Claw, it has some stab dark moves like Throat Chop, though it has a unique move in the form of Jaw Lock, which is an 80 base power dark type move, and it prevents the user and the target from switching out until either of them faints. So you kind of lock the opponent into the battlefield, and that can be huge as well. Like if you can predict a good switch, or somehow try to force something to stay in, like that can be really massive, just locking them into the battlefield until you knock them out. With a Pokemon that has this high of an attack stat, it shouldn't be too hard to get some knockouts. It also has Scale Shot, which was a move that was introduced in Sword and Shield, a move that really helped Garchomp be just insanely good, but unfortunately in Gen 9, Garchomp doesn't get it anymore, but Roaring Moon does get it. This is a base 25 power move. It hits 2 to 5 times in a row and that makes me interested in the loaded dice item, so that could be an interesting addition to this meta as well. And also what this move does is it boosts the user's speed stat but lowers their defense. So this move has potential to make Roaring Moon an absolute nightmare. And I think there's a lot of ways you can play around with its massive attack stat and its awesome speed stat, as well as all of these other abilities that I'm kind of talking about. I think Roaring Moon has a ton of potential to just be a real offensive monster. It does also have Dragon Dance, which boosts its attack and speed, so obviously that's nice as well. And of course, you're never going to want to forget about the fact that you can Terrastalize, which will offer you an additional defensive bonus if depending on what you Terrastalize into, as well as some offensive pressure with Terra Blast. So I just personally, Roaring Moon is my favorite design of these Paradox Pokemon, but also I think it has potential to be an awesome offensive force in the meta. And the next Pokemon I want to talk about is Iron Bundle. This Pokemon is the Delibird variant, and if you ever told everyone that a form of Delibird would be one of the most powerful Pokemon in the game, I don't know if anyone would believe you, but here we are. This Pokemon is actually just awesome. I think this is great. Now, the thing about Iron Bundle is it's a water and ice type, which we haven't seen in a long time. I know we used to get those a lot. Like in Gen 1, we had like Dugong and Cloyster and Lapras. You know, Gen 3, we had Walrein. I can't really think of too many other water and ice types that we've had since then. I'm probably missing some, but my point is a lot of the water and ice types that we've gotten in the past have been more bulky, more tanky. This one is just pure offense. This Pokemon has a massive 124 special attack, which is great, and a base 136 speed. So this thing will be faster than everything except for Dragapult, which is great because this is also one speed point higher than Flutter Mane. So you're also faster than Flutter Mane for what it's worth. It also weirdly has a base 114 defense stat, which is just kind of random. It would have been nice if they had taken out some of those defense points and just put them into special attack or speed just to make them even better. Maybe it doesn't need to be better though. And then it has base 80 attack with a move like Flip Turn, so you can kind of like predict a switch, go for Flip Turn, get off a little bit more damage than you normally would otherwise, because that 80 is like an okay-ish attack stat. But the other thing about Iron Bundle is its coverage is not really there. It has Hydro Pump, it has Ice Beam, it has Freeze Dry as well, but aside from all of those moves, it doesn't have too much going for it in the way of coverage. So I think when you're using this Pokemon, you're going to be focused mostly on that massive special attack and massive speed stat, and then probably you're going to want to Terrastalize it just to kind of give yourself more offensive pressure. So aside from that, you know, like I said, it just doesn't have all that much going for it. And I still think it's going to be a good Pokemon. I mean, I know we don't talk too much about Smogon, you know, OU and stuff, but this Pokemon was actually banned from OU just for being such a menace. So this is a cool design. I like this Pokemon a lot. I think it has a lot of potential, but again, the coverage is just very lacking for this thing. You know, it doesn't have any electric moves, doesn't have any steel moves, etc., unless you're counting Terra Blast, but yeah. All right, the next Pokemon I want to talk about is one that I think is actually looks on paper, this thing looks like a monster. I mean, I guess literally all of them do, but this is Iron Moth. Iron Moth, let's start with its typing, poison and fire type, which is decently unique, and they have decent coverage together. But what I want to talk about is Iron Moth's massive base 140 special attack, as well as its excellent base 110 speed. It's kind of all you need to know about this Pokemon. It also has access to Fiery Dance. So this is like, you know, it's similar to Volcarona. It learns a lot of the same moves as Volcarona. Most importantly though, it does not learn Quiver Dance. So this is more of just a purely offensive kind of Volcarona variant, whereas a lot of Volcaronas you see in Battle Stadium singles are a little bulkier and they're trying to set up Quiver Dances and just sweep from there. This thing is just not, this thing can't take hits as well as Volcarona, but you don't want to focus on that. You just, in my opinion, you just want to give this a choice specs and just spam Fiery Dance. I think that's a insane move and on a Pokemon with that high of an attack or special attack stat and that high of a speed stat, I think this thing is going to be scary. It also has solid coverage. It has Stab Sludge Wave. It has access to Discharge. It has Bug Buzz and Giga Drain and Earth Power. This thing just has almost anything you could ever want for a strong physical attacker. So yeah, I think I have my eyes on this Pokemon, and this might be one of the first Pokemon I try out. It has Dazzling Gleam as well. Sorry, it might not have Earth Power. I might have read that wrong. But either way, it has Dazzling Gleam. It has all those other moves I mentioned. And yeah, I think this Pokemon is just a nightmare. I think this Pokemon is terrifying, and I actually think this might be one of the Pokemon that I try out first, just because it has so much going for it, and it looks like it's going to hit so hard. And just like Volcarona takes huge advantage of terastallizing, I think Iron Moth will as well. So Iron Moth is a scary, scary Pokemon to think about. It's fast, it hits like a nuke, and I think you can expect to see it everywhere once these Pokemon are released in Battle Stadium singles. And the fifth Pokemon I want to talk about here is Iron Valiant, which is a really interesting one. First of all, it's a fairy and fighting typing, which is, I think, a really excellent type combination. I mean, fairy is just a fantastic type right now, and this Pokemon is just another offensive nightmare. If you couldn't tell, I love me some offensive Pokemon, but also at the same time, most of these Paradox Pokemon are more offensively inclined. Like, not too many of them are like purely defensive Pokemon. But anyways, when it comes to Iron Valiant, we've got that base 130 attack, which is excellent, base 120 special attack, which is really good, and base 116 speed, which is actually really fast as well. So Iron Valiant just really has so much going for it, kind of like Iron Moth. Obviously, it's faster than Iron Moth, but this Pokemon's great because you can run a really good mix set if you wanted to, or you could just focus on physical attack if you want, but this thing just has so many options. It has excellent coverage. It just has coverage for days. It's got Shadow Sneak, it's got Dazzling Gleam, Psycho Cut, Night Slash, Leaf Blade, Moonblast, Close Combat, Spirit Break, and those are just the moves it learns. You know, from there, like, those are just the moves it learns by level up. From there, you also have all of the elemental punches. You've got Drain Punch, you've got Poison Jab, X Scissor, Liquidation, Aura Sphere, Shadow Ball. Again, this thing just has, for an offensive Pokemon with that high an attack and special attack stat, this thing has all the coverage you could ever want. So I think there's a lot to be said about that fact alone. This Pokemon just, again, I think this Pokemon's gonna have so many options for how you can run it, and because of that, I think it has potential to be one of the scariest Pokemon, because, you know, I talked about how Iron Moth was scary because it has such a massive special attack stat and great speed, but that's kind of all it has, right? You know, when you see an Iron Moth, it's probably gonna go for Fiery Dance, or it's probably gonna go for another special attack, right? With Iron Valiant, you don't know exactly what it's gonna do. Maybe it's gonna Swords Dance, maybe it's gonna, you know, Calm Mind, maybe it's gonna use Trick, maybe it's gonna hit you with a super effective move that you're not expecting, right? So this thing, I think, just has so many different options that makes it so scary by itself. And I think it was absolutely worth mentioning because of that. And last but not least, we have, I guess, what I will call an honorable mention. I know I said I would be just naming 5 Pokemon to watch out for, but this Pokemon right here, I think, was just so awesome looking, and I just really wanted to mention it as well. This is Iron Jugulis. I think easily the weirdest name of the bunch. And obviously this is a Hydreigon variant. Personally, I love Hydreigon. If you've heard me talk about it, it's one of my favorite Pokemon ever. And this is, in some ways, a better Hydreigon. I mean, the most important thing to note is that this thing has a slightly lower special attack stat than Hydreigon. However, it has a much higher speed stat than Hydreigon, which I think is a pretty big deal. And as far as moves it gets, now, importantly, I don't remember if I mentioned this, but importantly, this is a dark and flying type. So it's losing out on the dragon typing. But as far as coverage goes, this thing has very similar coverage to Hydreigon. You've got Flash Cannon, you've got Focus Blast, Fire Blast, Earth Power, you still have Dragon Pulse. So this thing has a lot of the same coverage options that Hydreigon does. It's just faster. So if you ever wanted a faster Hydreigon that doesn't really always need to rely on like Choice Scarf to do work and to be fast, this could be your answer right here. It also has decent bulk, base 94 HP, 86 defense, 80 special defense. This thing is actually pretty decently bulky. The downside here is Hydreigon's one of the best Pokemon right now in singles and doubles because it's a big offensive threat that can absolutely capitalize on terastallizing. Usually it terastallizes into a poison type or a steel type to kind of, you know, fake out Pokemon that would otherwise kill it or hit it with super effective moves. It can also terastallize into a fire type for more offensive pressure. The big thing about Hydreigon though is that it has the levitate ability, which means it's always immune to ground type moves, no matter what type it terastallizes into. Iron Jugulis is immune to ground type moves because it's a flying type, but if you terastallize it, it will lose out on that flying type, which means it will no longer be immune to ground moves. But still, I think this Pokemon has a lot of potential, and I think because it's just so similar to Hydreigon, it's just faster. I think that's something to look out for with this Pokemon as well. Doesn't hit as hard as a lot of the other Pokemon I talked about, but still hits hard enough, and again, it's fast. What more could you want, right? I love this Pokemon, and I'm excited to try it out as well. So yeah, that's my little spiel about the new Battle Stadium singles rule set. This will also be the same exact rule set for VGC or doubles, so you can expect that. And again, this will begin in February. So we have one season going on right now, which again just started a couple days ago. This is the same rule set as before, but then when this current season ends, this new season will take its place with the addition of the Paradox Pokemon. So I'm really excited to try out all these Pokemon I talked about today. I hope you are too. Please let me know in the comments which of these Paradox Pokemon you are most excited to try out. And if you have any cool or kooky sets for these, again, a lot of them are pretty cut and dry, like, you know, they're a physical attacker or a special attacker, but some of them are a little mixed, and it'll be fun to experiment with a lot of these. So thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, leave me a comment, and I'll talk to you later.